Hello, my dear adventurers. Welcome back to another evening of theories, mysteries, and the beautiful chaos that is Stranger Things. I'm genuinely buzzing with excitement tonight because we're diving deep into everything we know about Volume 2, and trust me, the theories swirling around the fandom right now are absolutely mental in the best possible way. So here's where we're at. Volume 1 dropped on Thanksgiving and delivered 4 episodes that completely upended everything we thought we knew about this series. We got Will Byers revealing powers nobody saw coming, Holly Wheeler becoming a main character trapped in Vecna's psychological prison alongside Max, and the shocking return of Kaylee after 8 years of absence. And then that trailer for Volume 2 dropped, and the internet absolutely exploded with theories, frame-by-frame analysis, and wild speculation that ranges from surprisingly plausible to absolutely bonkers. Volume 2 arrives on Christmas Day with 3 more episodes, and then we get the finale on New Year's Eve. That's right, the Duffer Brothers are giving us the gift of heartbreak for the holidays. The trailer opens with Will's voice trembling as he tells Joyce they failed, that they never stood a chance. But Joyce, being the absolute warrior she is, refuses to accept defeat. And from there, the trailer takes us on this pulse-pounding journey through Hawkins' lab in the Upside Down, mysterious swirling entities, and Vecna promising to usher in his new world. Tonight, we're going to break down every theory, every clue, every tiny detail that fans have been obsessing over since that trailer dropped. We'll talk about Will's newfound abilities and whether he might turn against his friends, Holly's role in Vecna's plan and her potential to develop powers of her own, Kaylee's return, and what it means for the final battle, the true nature of the Upside Down that the Duffers have promised to finally reveal, and which beloved characters might not make it out alive. I've spent hours digging through Reddit threads, fan theories, cast interviews, and trailer breakdowns to bring you the most comprehensive look at what Volume 2 might hold. Some of these theories are backed by solid evidence from the show and the Duffers' own hints. Others are pure speculation, born from desperate hope or fear. But all of them are worth exploring because this is the final chapter of a story that's been building for nearly a decade. So grab your coziest blanket, settle in for the night, and let's explore every dark corner of what might be coming our way. Before we dive in, if you love these deep dives and want to support the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It genuinely helps, more than you know, and it means I can keep bringing you these lengthy explorations into the shows and stories we all obsess over. All right, let's begin with the revelation that shook Volume 1 to its core and will absolutely define Volume 2. Runor's Will Byers, The Sorcerer Awakens. The ending of Episode 4, titled Sorcerer, was one of the most jaw-dropping moments in Stranger Things history. For 8 years, Will Byers has been the victim, the kid who got taken, the one who got possessed, the character who sensed danger but couldn't fight back. But in those final moments, everything changed. Will Byers has powers, and they're terrifying in their potential. Here's what happened. The military access control zone was under siege. Demogorgons were everywhere, tearing through soldiers and civilians alike. Robin and Murray were trying to evacuate school children, being chased by these monsters through the streets of Hawkins. Mike, Lucas, and Robin were seconds away from being killed by 3 separate Demogorgons, closing in from different locations. It looked hopeless. Vecna himself had emerged from the Upside Down, standing there watching his plan unfold, and he specifically told Will that he'd chosen him because he was the weakest, the easiest to break. And that's when Will snapped, not in anger, but in determination. Robin had given him this beautiful speech earlier about fear and identity and finding strength within yourself. And as death approached, Will remembered his life, meeting Mike for the first time, being asked if he wanted to be friends, drawing with his mother at the kitchen table, building Castle Byers with Jonathan in the woods. These memories grounded him, reminded him of who he is beyond his trauma. Then his eyes went white. Will suddenly saw through the eyes of all three Demogorgons simultaneously. He could feel them, control them through the hive mind connection he's maintained since 1983, when Vecna first took him to the Upside Down. With a gesture that mirrored Eleven's iconic stance, arms outstretched, Will froze all three monsters in place. And then, just as Vecna does with his victims, Will snapped their limbs, killing them instantly. The episode ended with Will wiping blood from his nose, that telltale sign of psychic exertion we've seen with Eleven countless times, and looking up with newfound purpose. The Duffer Brothers have explained that Will's powers are fundamentally different from Eleven's. El's abilities are innate, born from Brenner's experiments with Henry Creel's blood. But Will's powers are channeled. He's tapping into the hive mind that Vecna controls, essentially puppeteering Vecna's own powers back at him. It's proximity-based, meaning Will can only access these abilities when he's close to the hive mind or when Vecna is actively using his powers. He can't move objects that aren't connected to the Upside Down. He can't open doors or crush Coke cans, but anything within that biological network he can manipulate. The Duffers have said they've been planning this reveal since early in the series. In Season 2, we saw hints of Will's connection when the Mind Flayer possessed him. He could see what it saw, feel what it felt. The now memories, Joyce called them. But nobody realized he could turn that connection into a weapon. Robin theorized it in Volume 1, suggesting Will might be acting like a receiver, and she was absolutely right. The question has never been whether Will had some kind of link to the Upside Down. The question was whether he could use it, and now we have our answer. Matt Duffer told Variety that this is Will's season to shine. They wanted to recenter the story on the character who started it all, the boy whose disappearance on November 6th, 1983, kicked off this entire saga. And they felt it was natural that Will would be the one to turn the tables on Vecna. He was the first victim, the first vessel, the one who showed Vecna that children could be broken and controlled. But now he's proving that being broken doesn't mean being defeated. Noah Schnapp, who plays Will, has been absolutely glowing in interviews about finally getting to show Will's strength. For so long, the character has been defined by his trauma, his fear, his vulnerability. But Schnapp always knew there was more beneath the surface. He's talked about how Will's journey this season involves accepting himself, coming into his own identity, and realizing he's more than just the kid who got kidnapped. The scene with Robin, where she talks to him about being gay and accepting who you are, was crucial. It wasn't just about his sexuality. It was about Will finally stopping running from all the parts of himself he's been scared of, including this connection to the Upside Down. Now here's where the theories get wild. The most popular one circulating Reddit right now is that Will might turn evil, that Vecna could use their connection to corrupt him, turn him into a villain. There's this theory based on Mike's speech to Holly in episode 1, where he talks about fighting monsters, evil wizards, and sorcerers. Monsters are the Demogorgons, evil wizard is Vecna, and the sorcerer, as episode 4's title suggests, is Will. Some fans think this is foreshadowing that Will become an antagonist, that Vecna will reassert control over him and force the others to fight their friend. The evidence for this is circumstantial but intriguing. Will has been connected to Vecna longer than anyone. He was the first person Vecna force-fed that mysterious substance to in 1983, as we saw in the Season 5 opening flashback. He's been part of the hive mind for 4 years now. And Vecna is strategic. He doesn't give up easily. What if letting Will access these powers is part of his plan? What if he wants Will to become powerful, to become confident, because that makes him a more valuable asset when Vecna eventually takes control? Jamie Campbell Bower has hinted that Vecna completely underestimates Will. He sees him as weak, as nothing, as incapable of achieving anything great. Those were Vecna's exact words in the trailer. But that underestimation could be genuine, or it could be calculated. Vecna is hundreds of years old if you count his time in the Upside Down. He's brilliant and manipulative. Would he really overlook the possibility that Will could turn his own powers against him? Or is he counting on it? The counter theory, and the one I personally lean toward, is that Will is going to be the key to defeating Vecna precisely because of this connection. The Duffers have said Will can manipulate anything within the hive. We've seen him control Demogorgons, but what about other creatures? What about the Mind Flayer itself? And most importantly, what about Vecna? If Will gets close enough, if he can tap into that connection deeply enough, could he take control of Vecna the way Vecna has controlled so many others? There's this beautiful narrative symmetry to the idea. Vecna chose Will because he was vulnerable, easy to manipulate, the perfect first victim. But that decision might be his downfall. Will has spent years living with this connection, learning to sense it, and now learning to use it. He knows the hive mind intimately. He's been part of it longer than Eleven has been aware of Vecna's existence. And unlike Eleven, whose powers require immense concentration and physical exertion, Will's connection to the hive is natural. It's part of him now. Gaten Matarazzo, who plays Dustin, said in an interview that Will's powers change the game. They give the group an even playing fields. Before, it was just 11 against Vecna and the Mind Flayer. Now they have 2 people with powers, even if those powers work differently. Finn Wolfhard joked that they basically have 2 11s now, which isn't quite accurate, but it speaks to how significant Will's abilities are. What I think Volume 2 will show us is Will learning to control his powers more deliberately. In Volume 1, it was instinctive, driven by desperation and the will to survive. But now that he knows what he can do, he and the others can strategize. They can use Will as an early warning system, sensing when Vecna is active. They can use him to control or redirect the Upside Down's creatures. And in the final confrontation, Will might be the one who gets inside Vecna's head, who turns the tables on the villain who's been in his head for years. The other major theory about Will is that he might lose an eye. This one sounds random, but there's actually a weird amount of evidence for it. Way back in Season 2, there was a classroom scene where the teacher was talking about Phineas Gage, a man who survived a metal rod going through his eye and brain. The camera lingered on Will during that discussion. Then there are all these visual parallels throughout the series, shots of Will with one eye obscured or hidden. Some fans think this is foreshadowing that Will be injured in the final battle, possibly losing an eye in the process but surviving, which would be a physical manifestation of the trauma he's endured. I'm not entirely sold on this theory, but I can't deny the evidence is there. The Duffers don't do anything by accident. If they showed us that Phineas Gage, seen with Will specifically in focus, there's probably a reason. Whether it's literal or metaphorical remains to be seen. What's certain is that Will Byers is no longer the victim. He's a warrior now, someone with the power to fight back, and Volume 2 is going to put that power to the test in ways we can't even imagine. Holly Wheeler, the girl who reads A Wrinkle in Time. One of the biggest surprises of Volume 1 was how central Holly Wheeler became to the story. For 4 seasons, she was background decoration, the adorable little sister who occasionally sensed something weird, but mostly just existed on the periphery of the chaos. But Season 5 recast her with Nell Fisher, an older actress who could carry dramatic weight, and immediately thrust her into the heart of Vecna's latest scheme. Holly's importance starts with her imaginary friend, Mr. Whatsit. Named after Mrs. Whatsit from Madeleine L'Engle's classic novel, A Wrinkle in Time, which Holly is constantly reading, Mr. Whatsit presents himself as a protector. He warns Holly that monsters are coming to Hawkins, that they like to eat children like her, and that he's there to keep her safe. At first, everyone thinks it's just a child's imagination, but we quickly learn that Mr. Whatsit is actually Vecna in his human form as Henry Creel, manipulating Holly through kindness rather than fear. The decision to connect Holly's storyline to A Wrinkle in Time is fascinating. The Duffers have said that just as the boys use Dungeons and Dragons to understand their adventures, Holly needed her own framework for making sense of the supernatural chaos around her. And A Wrinkle in Time, with its themes of fighting cosmic evil and traveling through dimensions, is perfect. In the book, the protagonists travel to a planet called Camazotz, where everyone's minds are controlled by an evil entity known as IT. Sound familiar? Volume 1 shows us Holly being taken by a Demogorgon after it brutally attacks her parents. She's brought to Vecna's mindscape, a twisted version of the Creel house that looks warm and inviting. Henry has made breakfast for her. He knows her favorite fruit. He's created this idealized sanctuary where she feels safe and special. It's manipulative in the most insidious way. Vecna learned from his failure with Max and the other teenagers. Fear and trauma can be resisted with happy memories. So instead, he's trying love bombing, making these children feel valued and protected so they won't want to leave. But Holly isn't alone in there. Max Mayfield is also trapped in Vecna's mindscape, has been since the Season 4 finale. And Max, having survived Vecna's curse once, knows exactly what he is. She finds Holly, reveals the truth about Mr. Whatsit, and the two form an alliance. Holly uses her knowledge of A Wrinkle in Time to understand what they're facing. She calls Vecna's mind Prison Camazotz. She calls him IT, and she's trying to figure out how to escape. The trailer for Volume 2 shows more of Holly and Max together, navigating this psychological landscape. There are shots of them in dark corridors, in the Creel house, in places that shift and change. Episode 5 is titled Escape from Camazotz, which tells us exactly what that episode will focus on. The question is how they escape, and at what cost. There's a theory gaining traction that Max might sacrifice herself to ensure Holly gets out. Max has already died once. 11 brought her back, but Max has been in a coma, brain dead, for over a year by this point. Her consciousness has been trapped in Vecna's memories for 584 days. That's almost 2 full years of psychological torture. Some fans think Max will realize she can't escape, that her body in the real world is too damaged, but she can help Holly leave. It would be devastating but poetic, Max the hero even in death. The alternative theory is that both of them escape, but they do so by understanding something crucial about Vecna's past. The wall, that mysterious rock formation that appears in Vecna's memories, seems to be significant. Holly and Max have both seen it. Holly even went there in episode 4, following a fake note she thought was from Mr. Whatsit, only to discover Max hiding there. The wall represents something Vecna fears, some past trauma or failure. If they can exploit that fear, they might be able to break free. Now here's where things get really interesting. Some fans think Holly might develop powers of her own. In episode 1, Mike gives Holly a Dungeons & Dragons figurine called Holly the Heroic. He describes her as a cleric with divine powers who can cast spells of protection and create dimension doors to teleport anywhere she visualizes. That's a very specific description, and the Duffers don't do things by accident. Is Mike's description foreshadowing? Will Holly somehow manifest these abilities for real? The evidence is thin, but it's not impossible. Vecna targets children between 9 and 11 years old. That was the age range of the Hawkins lab test subjects. Brenner used Henry Creel's blood to give them powers. What if exposure to Vecna's mindscape, being inside his psychological world for an extended period, somehow changes Holly? What if the other children Vecna has taken, the 12 kids mentioned in Volume 1, all develop some kind of abilities as a result of this exposure? We know from the first Shadow play that people who visit Dimension X, the pure dimension where the Mind Flayer originates, can undergo physical changes that give them powers. That's how Henry Creel got his abilities as a child. He was flayed by the Mind Flayer in a cave in Nevada, which transformed him. If Vecna's mindscape has a similar effect, if it's essentially a pocket of Dimension X, then prolonged exposure could theoretically alter someone. Jamie Campbell Bower has said in interviews that Vecna chose Holly specifically because she's bright, challenging, intelligent. He saw her as his most difficult target, but also the most valuable if he could win her over. Bower mentioned thinking about Holly's potential and what makes her special compared to other children. If that specialness is tied to her capacity to develop powers, it would make her Vecna's greatest prize and greatest threat. There's also this beautiful parallel between Holly and 11. Elle was raised in the lab, given a number, dehumanized and treated as an experiment. But she retained her humanity, her capacity for love and friendship. Holly has been targeted by Vecna, pulled into his world, but she's using A Wrinkle in Time and her own intelligence to resist his manipulation. Both are young girls facing impossible evil and refusing to break. If Holly does develop abilities, she could become another psychic ally in the final fight. The casting choice supports this theory. Nell Fisher, the actress playing Holly, has talked about how the role required more maturity and emotional depth than what was needed in previous seasons. The Duffers specifically recast Holly because they needed someone who could carry a protagonist's weight. That suggests Holly's role in Volume 2 in the finale will be substantial, not just being rescued, but actively participating in the solution. What I think we'll see is Holly using her knowledge of A Wrinkle in Time to navigate Vecna's mindscape in ways he doesn't expect. In the novel, the protagonists defeat IT by using love and individuality, by refusing to conform to its control. Holly understands this. She's reading the book, she's seeing the parallels, and she's going to apply those lessons. Whether that manifests as literal powers or as psychological resistance that weakens Vecna's hold, Holly Wheeler is going to be a hero. The little girl who was always in the background is stepping into the spotlight at exactly the right moment. The return of 8 and the natural 20 theory. The most shocking reveal in Volume 1, even more than Will's powers, was Kali Prasad's return. 8, Eleven's lost sister from that controversial Season 2 episode, has been missing for 8 years in our world and 3 years in the show's timeline. When Hopper and Eleven finally break into the vault at the military base in the Upside Down, expecting to find Vecna or some new horror, they discover Kaylee instead. She's restrained, hooked up to machines and IVs, her head shaved. It's a gut-wrenching image, seeing her reduced to an experiment again, just like when she was a child at Hawkins' lab. The Duffer brothers have admitted that bringing Kaylee back was always a debate. Season 2's The Lost Sister episode is notorious for being the lowest-rated episode of the entire series. It deviated from the main plot, introduced new characters we'd never see again, and took Eleven away from Hawkins at a crucial moment. Many fans considered it filler, a narrative dead end, but the Duffers always knew they'd bring her back for the finale. They just needed the right moment, the right reason, and Volume 2 is apparently where that payoff happens. Ross Duffer told Entertainment Weekly that they didn't want Kaylee's episode to feel like a mistake or a loose end. They felt they couldn't end Stranger Things without bringing her back into the story. And according to the Duffers, Kali plays a crucial role in Eleven's journey and in the overall narrative of Volume 2. Millie Bobby Brown has said that filming scenes with Linnea Berthelsen was incredibly emotional, that Kali is one of the few people who truly understands what Eleven has been through, similar to Will in that regard. So what is Kali's role? The obvious answer is that Dr. K and the military have been using her to create a weapon against Eleven. Throughout Volume 1, Kay has been hunting Elle relentlessly, seeing her as the cause of all Hawkins' problems. Kay doesn't understand the experiments or the history. She just knows there's a powerful girl with abilities causing chaos, and Kay wants to neutralize her. By capturing Kaylee and studying her illusion powers, Kay might have found a way to counteract Eleven's telekinesis. There's evidence for this in the show. The military has satellite technology that can inhibit Eleven's powers, making her weaker or unable to use them at all. Where did that technology come from? Probably from studying Kaylee. If they can harness her ability to create illusions and manipulate perception, they could theoretically create technology that disrupts psychic abilities in general. But here's where it gets interesting. Kaylee's powers might be exactly what the group needs to fight Vecna. Think about it. Vecna's greatest weapon is psychological. He traps people in their worst memories, forces them to relive trauma until it destroys them. That's a form of illusion, showing people things that aren't really happening in the present. Kaylee's powers work in a similar way. She can create projections, make people see things that aren't there, render herself and others invisible. What if she can project illusions into Vecna's mindscape? What if she can confuse or distract him during the final battle? The Duffers have called bringing Kaylee back a big swing, suggesting her role is going to be significant and possibly surprising. Millie Bobby Brown has said Kaylee is heavily utilized in the season, which means she's not just making a cameo appearance. Somehow, Eleven and Hopper are going to free her from that vault, and she's going to join the fight. This is where the natural 20 theory comes in, and it's absolutely brilliant. In Dungeons & Dragons, rolling a natural 20 on a 20-sided die is the best possible outcome. It's a critical hit, an automatic success, the moment when everything comes together perfectly. Stranger Things has always been steeped in D&D mythology, using the game as a framework for understanding the supernatural threats. So fans started doing the math. 11 plus 8 equals 19. Add 1, Vecna's original number, and you get 20. But 1 is the villain, not an ally. So how do you get to 20? The answer is Will. He's not a numbered subject from Hawkins' lab, but he has powers now, channeled from Vecna through the hive mind. If you count Will as part of the equation, suddenly you have 11, 8, and Will, 3 people with psychic abilities, versus Vecna, who is 1. The final battle might require all 3 of them working together, each bringing their unique abilities to the fight. 11 has raw telekinetic power. Kaylee has illusions and perception manipulation. Will has control over the hive mind and anything connected to it. Together, they might achieve that natural 20, the perfect critical hit that defeats Vecna once and for all. This theory has taken over Reddit and fan forums because it's exactly the kind of thing the Duffers would do. They love D&D references, they love narrative symmetry, and they love giving characters moments to come together as a team. The idea that the final battle would require this specific combination of powers, this perfect roll of the dice, is both thematically satisfying and mathematically elegant. There's also the possibility that Kaylee has been corrupted or changed by her time in the Upside Down. She's been exposed to that dimension for who knows how long. The Mind Flayer has the ability to corrupt and control. Vecna feeds on trauma. Kaylee has plenty of trauma from her childhood at the lab, and being captured again by military scientists probably didn't help. What if she's already been found and influenced by the Upside Down's presence? What if she's not entirely herself anymore? That would create an interesting conflict. 11 trusts Kali implicitly. They're sisters, fellow survivors of Brenner's experiments. But Hopper and the others might see Kali as a risk, someone who could be a wild card or even a liability. There could be tension about whether to include her in their plans, whether her illusion powers are too unpredictable or potentially dangerous. That emotional conflict would add another layer to the already high-stakes situation. Matt Duffer has said that Kaylee's return happens pretty early in Volume 2, and that her role becomes clearer as the episodes progress. By the finale, we'll understand exactly why she needed to be part of this story. My guess is that she'll be crucial in the final confrontation with Vecna, using her illusions to either protect the others, confuse Vecna, or help Eleven and Will coordinate their attacks. The natural 20 theory might not be literally stated in the show, but thematically it tracks. This is a team effort, and Kaylee is part of that team now. The other beautiful thing about bringing Kaylee back is what it represents for Eleven's character. She spent so much time feeling alone, feeling like she's the only one who can stop these threats, because she's the only one with powers. But now she has Will, who understands the connection to the Upside Down. And she has Kaylee, who understands the lab, the trauma, the isolation of being different. Eleven doesn't have to carry this burden alone anymore. She has family, real family, people who share her abilities and her pain. That's powerful, and it's exactly the kind of emotional core the Duffers excel at creating. Deconstructing the Volume 2 trailer. Let's talk about that trailer, because every single frame is packed with information and implications. It opens with Will's voiceover. "We failed. We never stood a chance." He sounds defeated, broken. Joyce immediately counters, holding him. "It's not over, not by a long shot." That exchange tells us Volume 2 is going to start from a low point. Volume 1 ended on a high with Will's powers revealing, but something happens between episodes that makes him feel like they've lost. Then we get Dustin's line, possibly the most important line in the entire trailer. This whole time, everything we have ever assumed about the Upside Down has been dead wrong. That's not just dramatic dialogue. That's the Duffers telling us directly that Volume 2 will completely recontextualize what we think we know about this dimension. Ross Duffer has said in interviews that they'll explain what the Upside Down really is, that this has been planned for 10 years. Whatever that explanation is, it's apparently going to shock everyone. The trailer shows Steve, Dustin, Nancy, and Jonathan in that upside-down version of Hawkins' lab. They're navigating vine-covered corridors, and there's this moment where they look up at something massive, something that makes Dustin say, "Mother of God." We see a swirling entity, red and black, almost like a storm or a massive organic structure. Some fans think this is the Mind Flayer's true form. Others think it's something else entirely, maybe the core of the Upside Down itself, or even a visual representation of the hive mind. In A Wrinkle in Time, the evil entity on Camazotz is called IT, and it's described as a disembodied brain, a massive pulsing thing that controls everything. The visual in the trailer, that swirling mass, looks a bit like that. If Holly is using A Wrinkle in Time to understand Vecna's world, maybe that book is more literal than we thought. Maybe what they're seeing is literally a massive brain-like structure, the central nervous system of the Upside Down. There are quick flashes of Eleven in what looks like a sensory deprivation tank again, plastic covering over her head. Leaks and theories suggest this is the moment Eleven dives into the mindscape to rescue Max and Holly. We know from past seasons that the sensory deprivation tanks amplify psychic abilities. If Elle needs to project her consciousness into Vecna's mental prison, that would be the way to do it. And if Kaylee is with her, using illusions to help navigate or protect them, that scene could be absolutely incredible. We see the radio tower in Hawkins, surrounded by what looks like the Mind Flayer, or dark energy. The radio tower has been a hub for communication and coordination throughout the season. If Vecna or the Mind Flayer is attacking it, that's a strategic move to cut off the hero's ability to organize. It also fits with the theory that Hawkins is merging with the Upside Down, that the boundaries between dimensions are collapsing. Episode 6 is titled The Bridge, which probably refers to this merging process. There's a shot of Vecna in full monster form prowling through Hawkins. He looks more powerful than ever, almost glowing with energy. Jamie Campbell Bower has teased that Vecna has leveled up this season, that he's stronger and more confident. The fact that he's walking through the real world, not just the Upside Down, is terrifying. It means the rift is wide enough for him to cross over fully, to bring his horror directly to the people of Hawkins. The trailer shows Robin, Lucas, and others in various states of fear and determination. There's Mike looking worried, Joyce holding Will, Hopper in tactical gear. Every character looks like they're gearing up for the fight of their lives. And then it ends with Vecna's voice saying, "It's time for a new world," followed by his face coming toward the camera. It's the kind of trailer that promises epic confrontation and massive stakes. What it doesn't show is just as important as what it does. There's no sign of Argyle, no sign of several supporting characters. There's no clear indication of where Eleven is for most of the trailer. We don't see the final battle. We don't see anyone dying. We don't see how anything resolves. That's intentional. The Duffers are very careful about spoilers, and they're not going to give away the ending in a trailer. But fans are analyzing every frame for clues. That shot of Steve and Dustin looking at each other, is that their last moment together before one of them dies? That image of Will bleeding from his nose, is he overexerting himself trying to control the hive mind? That glimpse of Nancy looking devastated, did she just lose Jonathan or Steve or someone else she cares about? Every moment is being scrutinized, and the theories are multiplying. One thing everyone agrees on is that Volume 2 is going to be darker than anything we've seen before. The Duffers have called it their scariest, most intense set of episodes. Episode 5 is directed by Frank Darabont, who did the Turnbow Trap in Volume 1, and the Duffers said he's flexing very different muscles this time, that it's far darker and scarier. Episode 6, Escape from Camazotz, is directed by Sean Levy, who always brings emotional weight to his episodes. And Episode 7, The Bridge, has been kept mostly secret, but it's the episode right before the finale, so it's obviously going to be crucial. The trailer promises answers, action, terror, and heartbreak. It promises that everything we thought we knew is wrong, and that the truth about the Upside Down will change how we see the entire series. Christmas Day cannot come fast enough. The true nature of the Upside Down revealed. For 8 years, the Upside Down has been a mystery. We know it's a parallel dimension. We know it looks like Hawkins, but darker, decayed, frozen in time on November 6th, 1983. We know it's filled with creatures that want to kill us and vines that spread like a hive mind. But what is it? Where did it come from? Why does it exist? Those questions have haunted the fandom since Season 1, and the Duffers have finally promised to answer them. Ross Duffer told Deadline that pretty early in Volume 2, we'll really start to understand everything about the Upside Down. He emphasized that this explanation has been meticulously planned for a decade, that it's not something they're making up on the fly. Whatever they reveal, it's been part of their vision since they first created the show. That level of long-term planning gives me confidence that the reveal will be satisfying, that it will make sense with everything we've seen. The most popular theory is that Eleven created the Upside Down when she opened the first gate in 1983. That when she touched the Demogorgon in the sensory deprivation tank and freaked out, her powers literally brought this dimension into existence. It would explain why the Upside Down is frozen on November 6th, 1983, why it specifically mirrors Hawkins, and why there's this deep connection between El and that world. It would also be a devastating burden for her to carry, knowing that every death, every trauma, every horror that's happened since then is because of her, even though she was just a child being manipulated by Brenner. But there's a problem with that theory. Henry Creel was sent to the Upside Down in 1979, 4 years before Eleven opened the gate, so the dimension existed before November 6th, 1983. Unless, and this is where it gets weird, Eleven's actions in 1983 somehow retroactively created or reshaped the Upside Down across time. If the dimension exists outside normal temporal rules, if it's not bound by linear cause and effect, then maybe Eleven creating it in the future affected its past. That sounds like nonsense, but Stranger Things has always played with time in strange ways. The alternative theory, which I find more compelling, is that the Upside Down is not a parallel dimension at all, but rather a corrupted version of our world tied specifically to Henry Creel's trauma and memories. When Eleven banished him there in 1979, maybe he didn't just arrive in a pre-existing hellscape. Maybe his powers, his psychic energy, his trauma shaped the dimension around him. We know from the first Shadow play that Henry was transformed by the Mind Flayer in Dimension X when he was a child. That dimension is described as the pure dimension, the origin place of the Mind Flayer and the Demogorgons. What if the Upside Down is Henry's attempt to recreate our world, filtered through his broken psyche and influenced by Dimension X? That would explain why it looks like Hawkins specifically, because Hawkins is where Henry lived, where his trauma occurred. It would explain why it's frozen in 1983, because that's when Will Byers was taken, when Vecna discovered children could be broken and controlled, when his grand plan really began. The Upside Down could be a reflection of Vecna's emotional state, a world of decay and death, because that's how he sees humanity. This theory is supported by the visual design of the Upside Down. It's organic, biological, almost like a living organism. The vines pulse like veins. The particles in the air look like spores or pollen. The whole dimension feels alive, and we know it's connected to the hive mind. When something is injured in the Upside Down, the entire network feels it. That's not how normal dimensions work. That's how a psychic network, a collective consciousness, works. There's also the question of the Mind Flayer's role in all this. Some fans believe the Mind Flayer is the true power behind everything, that Vecna is just another puppet, another victim of its influence. The Mind Flayer was in Dimension X long before Henry Creel was born. It flayed young Henry when he was just a kid exploring a cave. Maybe it's been manipulating him his entire life, grooming him to become Vecna, using him to merge our world with Dimension X so the Mind Flayer can invade fully. Jamie Campbell Bower has hinted in interviews that there's more to Vecna's relationship with the Mind Flayer than we've seen. He's talked about power dynamics and control, about whether Vecna is really the one in charge or if he's being used. That ambiguity is intentional. The show has always kept the Mind Flayer mysterious, this massive shadowy presence that feels ancient and unknowable. If the reveal is that the Mind Flayer has been the ultimate villain all along, that would be a massive twist. What about the wall? That rock formation that appears in Vecna's memories, the place that Holly and Max discovered, the location that seems to terrify him. The wall is clearly significant. The Duffers wouldn't focus on it so much if it weren't important. Some fans think it's the location where young Henry Creel was first flayed by the Mind Flayer. Maybe it's a gateway to Dimension X, a thin spot between worlds. Or maybe it represents a psychological barrier, something in Vecna's past that he's trying to forget or suppress. The wall could also be connected to the revelation about the Upside Down's true nature. If the Upside Down is a psychic construct, a manifestation of Vecna's mind, then the wall might represent the limits of his control. It's the one thing he can't manipulate, the one memory he can't change. And if Holly and Max can exploit that weakness, if they can break through that wall either literally or metaphorically, they might find a way to collapse the entire dimension. Ross Duffer has said that explaining the Upside Down will also explain the time freeze, why it's stuck on November 6, 1983. That detail has bothered fans for years. Why that specific date? What's special about it? The obvious answer is that it's when Will disappeared, but that feels incomplete. What mechanically caused the dimension to freeze at that moment? Is it tied to Will's abduction? Is it tied to something Vecna did? Is it tied to the gate opening? My best guess, based on all the evidence and hints, is this. The Upside Down is a psychic construct created jointly by Henry Creel's trauma and the Mind Flayer's influence. It exists as a bridge between our world and Dimension X, a space where the two realities overlap. It's frozen on November 6, 1983, because that's when Vecna perfected his plan, when he successfully took a child and began building his army of vessels. The dimension is essentially a reflection of Vecna's ambitions, a prototype for what he wants to do to our entire world. And if that's true, then destroying Vecna might destroy the Upside Down entirely. It might collapse the bridge, seal the gateway, and save our world. But it might also require immense sacrifice, because psychic constructs this powerful don't just disappear. Someone might need to stay behind to keep it closed, or the destruction of the Upside Down might take whoever's inside it at the time. That's the kind of tragic choice the Duffers love, and it would explain why they've warned us about deaths and heartbreak in the final episodes. Max's fate and escape from Camazotz. Max Mayfield has been through hell, literally. At the end of Season 4, Vecna killed her. Her heart stopped. Her bones were broken. Lucas held her as she died in his arms. But Eleven used her powers to bring Max back, to restart her heart and keep her consciousness alive somehow. Since then, Max has been in a coma, brain dead according to the doctors, but Eleven knows better. Max's mind is somewhere else, trapped in Vecna's memories, in his psychological prison that Holly now calls Camazotz. For 584 days, Max has been navigating that mindscape. That's almost 2 full years. Think about the psychological toll of being trapped in someone else's mind for that long, especially someone like Vecna. She's been forced to witness his memories, his perspective, his justifications for the horrors he's committed. But she's also learned things, seen his weaknesses, found safe spaces like the wall where his control seems weaker. When Holly is taken and brought to Camazotz, Max finds her. She saves Holly from being completely fooled by Mr. What's-Its friendly facade. She explains who Vecna really is, what this place really is, and what they need to do to escape. The alliance between Max and Holly is one of the most interesting dynamics in Volume 1. This experienced survivor helping a child understand impossible danger, and it's going to be central to Episode 5. Episode 5 is titled Escape from Camazotz and directed by Shawn Levy. Levy always brings emotional depth to his episodes. This is the man who directed Dear Billy, the episode where Max escaped Vecna's curse the first time by holding on to her happy memories, and Kate Bush's running up that hill. If anyone can deliver a satisfying resolution to Max's story, it's Levy. But the question is what that resolution looks like. The optimistic theory is that Max and Holly escape together. They find a way out of Vecna's mind, maybe by exploiting the wall or by Eleven pulling them out psychically. Max's consciousness returns to her body. She wakes up from her coma, and she gets to reunite with Lucas and her friends. It would be a beautiful moment, Max defying death a second time, proving that love and hope really can overcome evil, and it would give Sadie Sink, who's been phenomenal as Max, a chance to shine in the final episodes. The pessimistic theory, which a lot of fans are bracing for, is that Max sacrifices herself to ensure Holly escapes, that she realizes her body is too damaged, that she's been gone too long, and that the best thing she can do is make sure this child survives. It would be gutting, absolutely devastating, but it would also be heroic in the truest sense. Max has always been brave, always been willing to stand up to bullies and monsters. Sacrificing herself to save Holly would be her final act of defiance against Vecna, proof that he didn't break her after all. Sadie Sink has been deliberately vague about Max's fate in interviews. She's talked about how meaningful the character is to her, how much she's enjoyed playing Max's journey, but she hasn't confirmed whether Max survives. The Duffers have said there will be deaths in Volume 2 and the finale, multiple deaths that will hurt. Max is definitely a candidate, as much as we don't want to admit it. There's also the question of what Max has learned during her time in Vecna's mind. She's had access to his memories, his past, his vulnerabilities. Jamie Campbell Bower has hinted that Max represents a tipping point for Vecna, that her presence in his mindscape affects him in ways he didn't anticipate. Maybe she's seen something that can be used against him. Maybe she understands his connection to the Mind Flayer better than anyone. That knowledge could be crucial to defeating him, but it might also come at a cost. If Max does survive and escape, the reunion with Lucas will be everything. He's been sitting by her bedside for months, reading to her, talking to her, refusing to give up hope. Caleb McLaughlin has said that Lucas's dedication to Max is one of the most important parts of his character this season. If she wakes up, if they get to be together again, it will be one of the most emotionally satisfying moments in the series. But if she doesn't, if Lucas has to say goodbye for real this time, it will break hearts across the fandom. The Camazotz metaphor is also interesting from a thematic perspective. In A Wrinkle in Time, the protagonists escape Camazotz by embracing their individuality, by refusing to conform to IT's control. Love and uniqueness are the weapons that defeat evil. That's exactly the message Stranger Things has been building toward. Vecna preys on people who feel isolated, who are struggling with trauma and guilt. His power comes from making people feel worthless and alone, but connection, friendship, love, those are what save people from him. If Max and Holly escape by embracing that message, by holding on to what makes them unique and valuable, it would be a perfect thematic climax. Max holding on to her love for Lucas, for her friends, for the life she wants to live. Holly holding on to her intelligence, her curiosity, her connection to her family. Together, they could break through Vecna's control and find their way home. Episode 5 is going to be crucial. It's the middle episode of Volume 2, the turning point before the final 2 episodes ramp up to the ultimate confrontation. If Max survives, she'll be part of that final battle. If she doesn't, her sacrifice will fuel the others' determination. Either way, Max Mayfield's story is reaching its conclusion, and it's going to be emotional regardless of how it plays out. Who dies, predictions, and dread. Let's talk about the theory nobody wants to discuss, but everyone is thinking about. Who's going to die in Volume 2 and the finale? The Duffers have been clear that not everyone makes it out alive. They've compared the ending to Return of the King, which famously killed several major characters. They've said Season 5 will have the most violent death in Stranger Things history, and they've warned us repeatedly that the finale will be emotionally devastating. So who's at risk? Steve Harrington is at the top of almost every death prediction list. It's brutal to admit, but the evidence is there. Steve was originally supposed to die in Season 1. The Duffers changed their minds because Joe Keery's performance was so good, but that original intention might resurface. Steve has completed his character arc beautifully. He went from popular jerk to devoted babysitter to someone who genuinely cares about these kids more than anything. His relationship with Dustin is one of the show's highlights, and narratively, Steve sacrificing himself to save Dustin or the others would be a perfect culmination of his journey. Joe Keery has been emotional in interviews about saying goodbye to the character. He's talked about how much Steve means to him, how playing this role changed his life. That's the kind of talk that makes you worried. If Steve does die, it will probably be in the finale, probably saving someone he loves, probably in a moment that will have the entire fandom sobbing, and it would resolve the love triangle with Nancy and Jonathan, not through choice, but through tragedy. Max is the other obvious candidate. She's technically already died once. Bringing her back again might feel cheap, like the show is unwilling to commit to consequences. The Duffers know this. If Max's story ends with her actually dying in Volume 2, it would hurt, but it would also feel earned in a horrible way. She fought Vecna twice and gave everything she had. Sometimes that's not enough, and that's the tragic reality of war against impossible evil. Hopper is less likely, but still possible. He already had a fake-out death in Season 3. Doing it again would feel repetitive. But David Harbour has been cryptic about Hopper's fate, talking about how his journey comes to a meaningful conclusion. If Hopper sacrifices himself to protect Eleven or Joyce, to give them a chance to stop Vecna, that would be in character. He's always been willing to die for the people he loves. The question is whether the Duffers will actually pull the trigger this time. From the younger cast, I think Dustin is most at risk. He's the heart of the group, the one who keeps everyone's spirits up. His death would hit harder than almost anyone else's. And there's this theory that Steve will die trying to protect Dustin, but fail, and Dustin dies anyway. That double tragedy would be absolutely gutting. I really hope this doesn't happen, but it's the kind of dark twist the Duffers might attempt. What about Will or Eleven? Some fans think one of them has to die to close the Upside Down permanently, that their connection to it is too deep to sever any other way. I don't see the Duffers killing Eleven. She's too central, too beloved, and they've always said they want to give her a hopeful ending. Will is slightly more plausible, especially with all the Christ figure imagery around his character, the sacrifice and resurrection themes. But I think Will survives, having finally proven he's more than just a victim. Nancy, Jonathan, Robin, Lucas, Mike, Joyce, all of them could potentially die, but I think they're relatively safe. The Duffers need some characters to survive to carry the story's legacy, to show that life goes on after the battle. My guess is we lose 2 or 3 major characters maximum, probably Steve, possibly Max, maybe one more unexpected death that will shock everyone. The Duffers have also promised the most violent death in the show's history. That phrasing is interesting. Not the saddest or most emotional, but the most violent. That suggests someone is killed in a particularly brutal way, maybe by Vecna directly, maybe torn apart by Demogorgons, maybe something even worse. That level of violence is unusual for Stranger Things, which has always been relatively tame with on-screen deaths. If they're warning us it's the most violent ever, they're preparing us for something truly horrific. There's also the question of whether any of the Upside Down's human collaborators die. Does Vecna die? Does Dr. K get her comeuppance? The villains need to be defeated, but whether that means death or some other fate remains to be seen. Vecna, in particular, is tricky. He's been built up as this ultimate evil for 2 seasons. He has to be stopped definitively. But is death enough? Can he even be killed in a traditional sense? Or does defeating him mean trapping him, sealing him away, destroying his connection to our world? The finale is 2 hours long. That's more than enough time for multiple deaths, emotional goodbyes, and devastating moments. The Duffers have earned our trust over the years. They know how to hurt us in ways that feel meaningful rather than cheap. Whatever deaths we get, they'll serve the story. They'll make sense for the characters, and they'll break our hearts because we've spent years loving these people. I'm not ready. I don't think any of us are. But that's part of why Stranger Things has been so special. It's willing to have real stakes, real consequences. Not everyone gets a happy ending, but the ones who survive will carry the memory of those who didn't, and that's its own kind of beautiful tragedy. Chancellor's wild theories from the Reddit trenches. Let's talk about some of the absolutely bonkers theories floating around the internet, because even if they're unlikely, they're fun to consider. Fan communities have been analyzing every frame, every line of dialogue, every costume choice, trying to predict what's coming. Some of these theories are surprisingly well reasoned, others are pure chaos. All of them show how deeply people care about this story. First up, the Thessal Hydra theory. In the very first episode, the boys' D&D campaign ended with them facing a Thessal Hydra, a multi-headed dragon. The creature has been referenced occasionally, and Will has drawn it. Some fans believe it will appear as the final boss, a massive creature even more dangerous than Vecna. The evidence is mostly thematic. Stranger Things loves bringing things full circle. Every season has introduced progressively more dangerous creatures. What's scarier than Vecna? A massive, multi-headed dragon combining all previous threats would qualify. However, introducing a brand new ultimate villain in the final episodes feels narratively risky. But if the Thessal Hydra appeared as a manifestation of the Mind Flayer's true form, it could work. Then there's the time travel theory. Some fans are convinced Volume 2 will involve someone going back to November 6th, 1983, trying to prevent the gate from ever opening. The evidence includes the show's obsession with that specific date and all the clock imagery. However, the Duffers have said they want an ending that honors the journey, so a full reset seems unlikely. The Will loses an eye theory is oddly specific, but backed by surprising visual evidence. Fans have compiled scenes where Will's face is partially obscured, and that weird focus on the Phineas Gage lesson in Season 2. If Will loses an eye in the final battle, it would be a physical scar to match his psychological ones. There's also the theory that the entire series has been a D&D campaign the kids are playing, which would be the worst possible ending. The Duffers have explicitly said they're not trying to be too clever or pull cheap tricks, so this theory is safely dismissible. The Lonnie Byers theory suggests Lonnie, Will's absent father, might have abused young Henry Creel. It would explain Will being specifically targeted and create a connection between the Byers family and Vecna's origin. But there's no real evidence for this, and introducing it this late would feel forced. Eddie Munson return theories persist, despite Joseph Quinn confirming Eddie is dead and staying dead. Fans loved Eddie, but sometimes dead means dead. Finally, the Duffers confirmed Barb's body will appear, probably as part of Vecna's hive or in the Upside Down. This would bring closure to that storyline from Season 1, showing what happened after the Demogorgon killed her. These theories show how engaged the audience is. Some predictions will be right, most will be wrong. But the theorizing is part of the fun, part of what makes waiting for new episodes bearable. The questions Volume 2 must answer. We're in the end game now. Volume 2 has 3 episodes to set up the finale, and there are massive questions that need resolution. The Duffers have promised that Season 5 will answer all the major mysteries, so let's talk about what those mysteries are and what we're hoping to learn. First, why is the Upside Down frozen on November 6th, 1983? We need a definitive answer. The Duffers have said explaining the Upside Down's true nature will explain the time freeze. What is Dr. K's ultimate goal with Eleven and Kaylee? What is she planning once she captures Eleven? Use both her and Kaylee to create super soldiers? The military's role needs addressing. How does the radio tower fit into Vecna's plan? The trailer shows dark energy surrounding it. Is Vecna trying to use it to broadcast something or destroy it? What's the deal with the wall? That rock formation in Vecna's memories is clearly significant. We need to know what happened there in Henry's past. What exactly is Dimension X, and how does it differ from the Upside Down? This distinction matters for understanding the cosmology of the series. Will Hopper get his job back? Set photos show him in his chief uniform. If he survives, returning to that role would represent healing and normalcy. What's the significance of November 6th appearing in different years? The date keeps recurring. Is it tied to something astronomical or mystical? How much overlap will there be with the first Shadow play? Matt Duffer has said there's more connection than what we saw in Volume 1. What role will minor characters play? People like Argyle, Vicky, and Erica have been part of the journey. How will they contribute? Finally, what is the Mind Flayer's relationship to Vecna? This is the biggest unresolved question. We need clarity on this power dynamic. These aren't small questions. These are fundamental mysteries that have been building for years. Volume 2 has 3 episodes to address them before the finale brings everything to a close. That's a lot of ground to cover, but the Duffers have earned our trust. They've been planning this, ending for a decade. They know what they're doing. And come Christmas Day, we're going to start getting our answers. Wurzp, the final battle, approaches. Everything has been building to this. 5 seasons, 8 years, countless hours of television, all leading to the final confrontation between our heroes and the forces of the Upside Down. The Duffers have said the battle in Volume 2 and the finale will be one of the most complicated sequences they've ever filmed. It involves multiple locations, dozens of characters, creatures both practical and CGI, and emotional beats that need to land perfectly. We know from the trailer that the battle will take place both in Hawkins and in the Upside Down. Steve, Dustin, Nancy, and Jonathan are navigating the Upside Down version of Hawkins' lab. Vecna is prowling the real Hawkins in his full monster form. The Mind Flayer is attacking the radio tower. Holly and Max are trying to escape Camazotz. Eleven is diving into the mindscape. Cully is somehow involved. Will is tapping into the hive mind. It's chaos, beautiful, complicated chaos, and somehow it all has to come together into a coherent climax. The title of Episode 7, The Bridge, suggests the dimensions are merging, that Hawkins and the Upside Down are becoming one. This has been foreshadowed throughout the season. The rift is growing. Reality is bleeding. If Vecna succeeds in his plan, everywhere will become like the Upside Down, a decayed nightmare world under his control. The heroes need to stop this merging, close the gates permanently, and defeat Vecna before he completes his transformation of our world. But how do you kill something like Vecna? He's been burned, shot, attacked by 11, and he just keeps coming back. He's connected to the Upside Down on a fundamental level. Killing him might require destroying the Upside Down itself, which could trap or kill anyone inside. That's the tragic choice at the heart of the finale. Someone might need to stay behind to ensure Vecna dies. Someone might need to sacrifice themselves to close the gate. The cost of victory is going to be high. This is where Will's powers become crucial. He can manipulate anything in the hive mind. If he can get close enough to Vecna, if he can tap into that connection deeply enough, he might be able to disrupt Vecna's control from within. Imagine Will seizing control of the Demogorgons, turning them against Vecna. Imagine him manipulating the vines, using the Upside Down's own biology as a weapon. Will could be the key to the entire victory. 11 brings raw power. She can fight Vecna directly, match his strength, protect others from his attacks. Kali brings illusions. She can confuse Vecna, hide people from his sight, maybe even create false images that distract or mislead him. Together, the 3 of them represent a trinity of psychic abilities that might be enough to take down a godlike monster. But they can't do it alone. The entire group needs to work together. Mike, planning strategy. Dustin figuring out weak points. Lucas and Erica providing support. Nancy and Jonathan fighting the physical threats. Steve protecting the kids. Robin using her intelligence to solve problems, Joyce refusing to give up hope, Hopper being willing to die if that's what it takes. Every character has a role to play, and the final battle will give each of them moments to shine. The emotional core of the finale will be about love and connection. That's always been the heart of Stranger Things. Eleven's love for her friends gave her the strength to fight Vecna in Season 4. Max's love for Lucas and her friends saved her from Vecna's curse. Will's love for Mike and his family grounds him even when he's terrified. These relationships are what make them strong enough to face impossible evil. The Duffers have said the ending will be bittersweet. There will be triumph, but also loss. There will be hope, but also heartbreak. Some characters will get the happy endings they deserve. Others won't survive to see the dawn. But the ones who do survive will carry the memory of those who didn't, and they'll build a better world in their honor. The finale is 2 hours long. It's being shown in select theaters across the United States and Canada, which speaks to how much faith Netflix and the Duffers have in it. They believe it's special enough, cinematic enough, to be experienced on the big screen. That's exciting and terrifying in equal measure. We're going to sit in those theaters or at home on New Year's Eve, and we're going to watch these characters we've loved for years face their ultimate test. I don't know if I'm ready. Part of me wants to stay in this anticipation forever, where anything is still possible, where everyone might survive and get their happy ending. But another part of me needs closure, needs to know how it ends, needs to see these characters complete their journeys. The wait has been long, but it's almost over. Until we meet again in Hawkins. And there we are, my dear friends. We've covered everything from Will's shocking powers to Holly's journey through Camazotz, from Kaylee's unexpected return to the theories about who might not survive the final battle. We've analyzed the trailer frame by frame, explored the mysteries of the Upside Down, and prepared ourselves emotionally for what's coming on Christmas Day. Stranger Things has been a phenomenon. It's introduced us to characters we love like family, created a mythology that's spawned countless theories and discussions, and reminded us that sometimes the best stories are about ordinary people facing extraordinary evil with nothing but their courage and their friends. The Duffer Brothers have crafted something special, and we're about to see how they bring it all to a close. Volume 2 arrives Christmas Day with 3 episodes that will set up the finale. Episode 5, Shock Jock, picks up right after Volume 1's ending, dealing with the immediate aftermath of Will's power revelation. Episode 6, Escape from Camazotz, will hopefully see Max and Holly breaking free from Vecna's mental prison. And Episode 7, The Bridge, will push us toward the ultimate confrontation, showing the dimensions merging and the stakes reaching their peak. Then on New Year's Eve, we get the finale. 2 hours to wrap up a story that's been building for nearly a decade. 2 hours to say goodbye to Hawkins and these characters we've followed through 4 years of supernatural horror. The Duffers have promised tears, have promised it's the darkest they've ever been, have promised that not everyone makes it out alive. We're going into this finale knowing we're going to hurt, but we're going in together as a community of fans who've shared this journey. Before I let you drift off to sleep, I want to say thank you for being here, for watching these videos, for caring about these stories, for being part of this community. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. It genuinely helps the channel grow and means I can keep making these long-form explorations of the shows we all love. Drop a comment with your own theories about Volume 2. Tell me who you think will survive, what you think the Upside Down really is, whether you believe Will might turn evil or stay good. I love reading your thoughts. Volume 2 is almost here. The final battle approaches, and whatever happens, whatever heartbreak awaits us, we'll face it together. Until then, stay safe, stay cozy, and I'll see you in the next adventure. Good night, my dear friends. Sweet dreams of Hawkins and the Upside Down, of demogorgons and telekinesis, of friendship and courage in the face of impossible darkness. See you on in next video.